At some point, effort stops feeling intelligent. You keep pushing, but the more force you apply, the less alive your life feels. What once felt clear now feels heavy. Simple decisions become mentally exhausting. You think about things constantly, but clarity never fully arrives. The mind keeps trying to get ahead of uncertainty, trying to resolve the future before life has actually responded. So you manage everything. You overplan, you overthink timing, you replay conversations. You try to make the right decision before enough reality exists to make that decision clearly. And underneath all of it is a quiet belief that if you can just think carefully enough, prepare thoroughly enough, or push consistently enough, you can finally create stability. You can finally relax. But the relaxation never fully comes. Even when things succeed, the nervous system stays tight. There's still another outcome to secure, another possibility to manage, another uncertainty to control. And eventually, life starts feeling less like participation and more like maintenance. Many people are not exhausted because life itself is too difficult. They're exhausted because they are trying to carry reality instead of remain in relationship with it. They're trying to force certainty before contact exists. So even successful people often feel disconnected from their own lives, not because they've failed, but because the system has become organized around control rather than responsiveness. And the problem usually isn't action itself. The problem is the nervous system believing reality must be controlled in order to feel safe. What makes this difficult to see is that force rarely feels like force while it's happening. It usually feels responsible, necessary, intelligent. The mind says, I'm just trying to make the right decision. I'm just trying to avoid mistakes. I'm just trying to create stability. But underneath that effort is often something much deeper. Force is frequently fear trying to become certainty, protection trying to become control, anxiety trying to become strategy. When uncertainty feels emotionally unsafe, the nervous system begins trying to control outcomes before reality has fully unfolded. It starts pushing for answers prematurely. It tries to eliminate unpredictability before enough information actually exists. This is why urgency becomes so deceptive. Urgency creates the sensation that clarity must happen now, that movement must happen immediately, that if you do not resolve the situation quickly enough, something important will be lost. But urgency compresses intelligence. The moment pressure escalates, perception narrows, the body tightens, listening decreases, and thinking becomes increasingly repetitive rather than insightful. This is why overthinking rarely produces real clarity. Overthinking is often an attempt to eliminate emotional risk before action occurs. The system keeps analyzing because it believes certainty will finally create safety. But certainty never fully arrives because the deeper issue was never lack of information. It was intolerance for uncertainty itself. And over time, this creates internal fragmentation. One part of the system is trying to push forward. Another part is pulling back. One part wants expansion. Another part fears what expansion might expose, destabilize, or require. So people begin overriding themselves constantly. This is why it becomes important to understand that action and force are not the same thing. Force feels contracted, pressured, rushed. It carries emotional urgency. It overrides signals. It disconnects action from responsiveness. Aligned action feels very different. It feels proportionate, responsive, present. There is movement but not self-violence, direction but not internal war. The body remains available while acting. And this matters because the body loses sensitivity under force. The more pressure increases, the harder it becomes to accurately feel timing, pacing, intuition, or reality itself. Intuition becomes distorted because the system is no longer listening, it is imposing. At that point, life is no longer being met, it is being managed. And force usually appears when the system no longer trusts contact with reality to be enough. Once force becomes the primary way the nervous system relates to life, it begins shaping everything, not just decisions, not just productivity, but perception itself. In work, force often looks productive at first. People overcommit because slowing down feels unsafe. They continue chasing goals long after those goals no longer fit. They push through exhaustion because stopping feels threatening. Rest begins to feel irresponsible. So the system keeps escalating effort even while clarity decreases. This is why burnout is often misunderstood. Burnout is not simply too much work, it is prolonged self-override. The nervous system eventually begins resisting the very life the person is trying to create, not because the goals are wrong, but because the system can no longer tolerate the way those goals are being pursued. The same pattern appears in relationships. People try to control connection because uncertainty inside relationships feels emotionally dangerous. They seek reassurance repeatedly. They manage how they are perceived. They force compatibility instead of remaining honest about what is actually present. Rather than allowing relationships to reveal themselves over time, the nervous system tries to stabilize emotional safety prematurely. But connection cannot deepen under control because real relationship requires contact, not management. The same distortion appears around money. Success becomes emotionally urgent. Timelines become psychologically loaded. Productivity turns fear-based. The system begins believing that safety exists somewhere in the future. After enough money arrives, after enough stability is secured, after enough proof exists. And because of this, people often struggle to receive slowly. They can pursue intensely, but they cannot settle enough to let life unfold at a human pace. Even spirituality and healing become distorted through force. People try to be aligned. They try to force surrender. They use spiritual ideas to eliminate uncertainty permanently. Even healing becomes another attempt to control discomfort. But true alignment cannot emerge through self-pressure, because pressure itself is often the distortion. This is why force can become so confusing. It often produces short-term movement while quietly damaging long-term coherence. Externally, life may appear successful. Goals are reached, progress happens, responsibilities are handled. But internally, the person becomes increasingly disconnected from themselves. Success starts feeling emotionally expensive. The nervous system stays contracted even after outcomes arrive. Nothing fully lands, nothing fully settles. And eventually the system begins resisting continued self-override. What once felt motivating begins feeling heavy. What once created momentum begins creating fatigue. What once felt meaningful begins feeling mechanical. Not because life is punishing the person, but because the body can only tolerate internal conflict for so long before it begins asking for something more honest. And this where a deeper realization begins to emerge. Reality becomes difficult to hear when the system is busy trying to control what it has not yet learned to trust. The shift begins when control stops being treated as the source of intelligence. Because aligned action does not come from controlling reality. It comes from remaining in contact with it. This is a very different orientation to life. Most people are taught to approach reality through imposition, decide what must happen, force clarity, push for outcomes, stabilize the future before it arrives. But life does not respond cleanly to pressure for very long. At a certain point, intelligence begins asking for something else, not passivity, not withdrawal, but responsiveness. Instead of trying to dominate uncertainty, the system begins learning how to stay present within it. And this changes the quality of action completely. Clarity is no longer forced in advance. It begins emerging through contact. Reality is allowed to respond. Feedback is allowed to matter. Timing becomes something listened to instead of overridden. This is why pacing becomes so important. Pacing is not hesitation, it is respect for integration. Force tries to move faster than the nervous system can remain coherent. Aligned movement allows expansion at the speed the body can actually inhabit. And when coherence is prioritized over intensity, something surprising happens. Less force is required. The next step often becomes simpler, more obvious, more proportionate. Not because life suddenly becomes predictable, but because the system is no longer exhausting itself trying to control what has not yet unfolded. This is the deeper meaning behind proposing without forcing. Intuition proposes, reality responds, life becomes dialogue instead of command. Action is no longer something imposed upon reality. It becomes something offered into relationship with it. And this changes the nervous system itself. Instead of constantly asking, how do I make this happen? The system begins asking different questions. What is actually true right now? What fits? What holds? What remains coherent? These questions do not collapse intelligence into force. They restore contact. And from that contact, a different kind of clarity begins to emerge. Not the brittle clarity that comes from urgency and control, but the quieter clarity that appears when the body is no longer fighting reality in order to feel safe. You may not need to force your life forward as much as your system believes. For many people, force has become so normal that it no longer feels like pressure. It simply feels like responsibility, like survival, like the only way life can continue moving. But there is a difference between participating in life and carrying it. There is a difference between responding and controlling. And often the exhaustion people feel is not coming from life itself. It is coming from the constant attempt to stabilize uncertainty before reality has had time to unfold. But clarity cannot be manufactured safely. The more pressure applied to force certainty, the less sensitive the system becomes to timing, pacing, and contact. And timing matters. Some things become clear through movement. Some things become clear through waiting. Some things only reveal themselves when the nervous system stops trying to rush resolution. Pressure is not intelligence. Urgency is not always truth. And life responds differently when the body is no longer organized around control. When force softens, listening returns, sensitivity returns, presence returns. The system no longer needs to dominate reality in order to feel safe within it. And from that space, action often becomes quieter, but far more accurate. What is truly aligned usually does not need to be forced into existence. The moment force softens, reality becomes easier to hear. And sometimes the next level of intelligence is not pushing harder, but remaining present enough to respond accurately.